This is the Chris DeGaulle Show podcast.
Okay, guys, let's just rip. And Chris DeGaulle.
Chris DeGaulle. Chris, thanks for being with me tonight.
Chris DeGaulle.
I'm joined now by Chris DeGaulle.
Now, he puts the broad in broadband. It's Chris DeGaulle.
The Chris DeGaulle podcast is presented by USMedicalPlan.com. Save big money monthly and get better health coverage at USMedicalPlan.com.
It's Thursday, the 26th day of January. I thank you so much for downloading the Chris DeGaulle Show podcast. Where's this week going? Coming up today, our pal Julie Kelly is back from American Greatness. She has some very important updates on the J6 detainees. Another one is facing trial. And what she has to say specifically about, you keep hearing this, 5 officers killed on January 6th. Do you know how to answer that if somebody said 5 officers were killed on January 6th? We go through this because you hear that often. There's one particularly famous officer named Brian Sicknick. He was not killed on that day. Neither were the other 4 officers killed on that day, nor were 4 of the 5 of them, all 5 of them weren't killed. They all died. Of what do you know? Do you know the actual story? So we retell it a little bit. We go through this a little bit, and I think it's an important conversation. Kevin McCarthy continues the beatdown. And I have to say, I give him all the credit in the world. I'll explain coming up. But suffice it to say, the outbursts, the tantrum throwing from all the right Democrats, Schiff, Swalwell, Ilhan Omar, tantrum throwing yesterday. So I want you, number one, to hear the beatdown McCarthy gave to some members of the press who are mad at him that he took the committee assignments away from the Three Stooges. I said their picture standing there yesterday at the press conference, it looked like the worst Three's Company reboot ever. We will get into that. Some other headlines of the day. Beto O'Rourke and Sam Bankman-Fried ties. Hunter Biden's artwork. Trump back on social media again, meaning Facebook and Twitter, perhaps. So that's all on the way. But first, let me tell you about the guy that makes this show possible every day. And I'm telling you, if you're trying to save on health insurance, I want you to pick up the phone and call him today. If you go to his website, if you don't see my smiling mug there, you're not on the website. You're not on the right website. USMedicalPlan.com is the website. I'm talking about John Ruhlman. USMedicalPlan, P-L-A-N, singular, USMedicalPlan.com. John and his lovely wife, his brother, they for 18 years have built a business that is customer-focused. And when I say that, I know everybody says, well, what other kind of business would you build? Well, in the business of health insurance, when, you get somebody on a great plan and maybe you save them money, that's only part of the business model. The second part of it is if for some reason, you're having an issue with processing a claim, or maybe you're tied up in some nightmare with insurance right now, you need an advocate. You truly need someone who advocates for you. They have something, I think, unprecedented in health insurance. They've developed a whole care department that is specifically tailored for you if you need to file a claim or you're having trouble getting a claim processed or you don't really understand the jargon of an insurance company. They handle it all for you. You need new cards or whatever. You're having ID issues. Let John Ruhlman and his team at USMedicalPlan.com handle that. Over 80 different insurance companies he deals with. Now, what does that mean and why is that important? Because if you need a supplemental insurance plan because you're a senior on a fixed income, he can find you the cheapest rates. Dental insurance, annuities, they do a diverse portfolio of business. And it's always focused on getting you the best coverage at the absolute best price. You small business folks, if you buy insurance for other people or you're paying out the nose for your family, give John like a couple of seconds. Call 877-410-4321 today. 877-410-4321. Tell him what's going on with your insurance and the rates you're paying. Let him see if he can find you better rates. How about 30 to 60% savings on your insurance rates? John Ruhlman can do it. USMedicalPlan.com. Again, look for my mug and the sponsorship. That's how you know you're on the right spot. He'll take great care of you. Tell him I said hi. And then let me know about your experience. USMedicalPlan.com. Well, I think that Kevin McCarthy is probably on the early ballot for Person of the Year by kicking Three's Company off the Intelligence Committee. Did you see the reaction? This is already going to get Friday's harumph. If you're not a Harumph Society member, I'm just telling you right now in advance, Kevin McCarthy is going to get Friday's harumph at the Harumph Society. Their reactions to this yesterday are priceless. I mean, they are in no power. They are in no position of authority whatsoever. Just if for some reason you're just joining us and you missed this, let's go back to yesterday first, because yesterday makes what happened, I should say 2 days ago. 2 days ago makes what happened yesterday delicious when played in succession. So there is this incredulous reporter with Kevin McCarthy, the new Speaker of the House, demanding to know, how dare he throw Adam Schiff and Eric Swalwell, Captain Douche. How dare he throw them, and Ilhan Omar, how dare he throw them off the Intelligence Committee? The known anti-Semite Ilhan Omar, the woman who is likely a tax cheat and we believe married her brother to evade taxes, literally. Eric Swalwell, who slept with a Chinese spy. Like, you can't even make that up. That's not even rhetorical. He literally slept with a Chinese spy. The notion that he would sit on the Intelligence Committee in the House, and he did, unapologetically under Nancy Pelosi, who, by the way, yesterday we found out that the Paul Pelosi, wholly independent story, but the Paul Pelosi police body camera has been ordered by a judge to be released. So I don't know what we're going to see there, but I can't wait. If that becomes, apparently it was made public yesterday. I am dying to see that body cam footage of cops showing up at Paul Pelosi's front door. Side note. Schiff, the list of horribles knows no end. Kevin McCarthy laid them out in full detail. Oh, you want to know why they're not on the... I didn't say they're not going to have any committee assignments. I said they don't get to sit on House Intelligence. Oh, you want to know why? I'll tell you why. This is a clinic. Look, if this is the new Kevin McCarthy, I'll take this Kevin McCarthy. Listen.
He's got elected by his district. So, okay, let me be very clear and respectful to you. You ask me a question. When I answer it, it's the answer to your question. You don't get to determine whether I answer your question or not, okay? In all respect. Thank you. No, let's answer her question. You just raised a question. I'm going to be very clear with you. The Intel Committee is different. You know why? Because what happens in the Intel Committee, you don't know. What happens in the Intel Committee, although the secrets are going on in the world, other members of Congress don't know. What did Adam Schiff do as the chairman of the Intel Committee? What Adam Schiff did, use his power as a chairman and lie to the American public. Even the Inspector General said it. When Devin Nunes put out a memo, he said it was false. When we had a laptop, he used it before an election to be politics and say that it was false and said it was the Russians. When he knew different, when he knew the Intel, if you talk to John Radcliffe, DNI, he came out ahead of time and says there's no intel to prove that, and he used his position as chairman, knowing he has information the rest of America does not, and lied to the American public. When a whistleblower came forward, he said he did not know the individual, even though his staff had met with him and set it up. So no, he does not have a right to sit on that. But I will not be like Democrats and play politics with these, where they removed Republicans from committees and all committees. So yes, he can serve on a committee, but he will not serve on intel, because it goes to the national security of America, and I will always put them first, all right?
He wasn't done, though. I mean, like, that's just Schiff. He goes, oh, now you want to dance on Swalwell? Let's dance on Swalwell.
And if you want to talk about Swalwell, let's talk about Swalwell, because you have not had the briefing that I had. I had the briefing, and Nancy Pelosi had the briefing from the FBI. The FBI never came before this Congress to tell the leadership of this Congress that Eric Swalwell had a problem with a Chinese spy until he served on intel.
See, that's
so
polite.
It wasn't just us who were concerned about it. The FBI was concerned about putting a member of Congress on the Intel Committee that has the rights to see things that others don't because of his knowledge and relationship with a Chinese spy. They brought it to the works of the leaders.
Relationship. Bang, banging, fang, fang is what he means.
So I do not believe he should sit on there. That committee, And I believe there's 200 other Democrats that can serve on that committee. So this has nothing to do with Santos. Santos is not on the Intel committee. But you know what? Those voters elected Schiff, even though he lied. Those voters elected Swalwell, even though he lied to the American public too. So you know what? I'll respect his voters too, and they'll serve on committees. But they will not serve on a place that has national security relevance, because integrity matters to me.
Right.
That's
on.
the answer to your question.
Harumph. That gets the harumph of the week. Kevin McCarthy, this, again, good Kevin. This is good Kevin. If this is the new Speaker of the House, I'm pleased. Now, of course, what he's politely saying, relationship with a Chinese spy, means bang-banging fang-fang. That's what that actually means. He was in bed with, quite literally with, a Chinese spy. Okay, so what does this tell it? I mean, he's being very fair. This is what Pelosi never did. What he's saying is, I'm not kicking them off of all committees. I'm not going to let a guy who slept with a spy sit on the Intelligence Committee. I'll put him on, like, transportation or something. Like, I respect the fact that despite these people are corrupt liars, their voters in their district still elected them. So, okay, I'm going to give them a spot somewhere, but I'm not putting them on intelligence. He said, in fact, there are 200 other Democrats who are perfectly qualified to sit on intelligence. I'm happy to seat them. So he's not being unreasonable. He's being perfectly common sense. Is this retaliation for Santos? And I haven't even really talked about this guy because I can't even tell you I know the story because I don't even really care. Some Republican in New York completely fraudulently represented himself, and now, you know, his Republican Party in his district wants him to step down or resign or what. Okay, so a guy lied on his resume and lied to voters and won. I mean, to Kevin McCarthy's point, are we now throwing out of Congress everyone who's lied to their voters? I don't care. I don't care about, is Santos a reprobate who shouldn't be in Congress? Okay, fine, I'll hear it, whatever. I'm not invested in George Santos, just like I wasn't invested in Marjorie Taylor Greene. These are elected representatives of their respective districts in their respective states. It's not worthy of my time. It's the district's problem from which they come. It's not worthy of my time. So this press person said, well, you just retaliating because you're upset about Santos? No, Eric Swalwell slept with a Chinese spy. I don't think he should be on intelligence. And all the list of objectionable things Schiff did, not to mention Ilhan Omar. So these three, the worst-looking Three's Company reboot in history, these three show up yesterday like petulant, spoiled children. And this is the point. The Democrats never apologize. Now, George Santos, okay, whoever he is, I don't know. He's caught in a lie. He's made up stuff about his story. He doesn't really say anything. He just kind of goes into hiding. The left makes fun. Everybody kind of cowers and avoids the story. What do these three do? The case has been laid bare before the American public what these three have done. They are reprobates. They are corrupt. They're disgusting liars, these three Democrats. What do? They hold a press conference, and they thump their chests like they're the victims. Listen to some of this yesterday.
This is purely about political vengeance. The cost is not only removing us from the committee. On the Intelligence Committee, the cost is not only shattering the most precious glassware in the cabinet, a committee that's always been bipartisan. The cost are the death threats that Ms. Omar, myself, and Mr. Schiff keep getting because Mr. McCarthy continues to aim and project these
bless their little
smears
hearts
against us. Even though we have said publicly these smears are bringing death threats, he continues to do it, which makes us believe that there's an intent behind it.
Smears.
But we will not be quiet. We're not going away. I think he'll regret giving all three of us more time on our hands.
Ooh, he'll regret. Well, now that sounds kind of threatening, doesn't it? He'll regret. I'll make him regret giving us more free time. You see what they do? Legitimate political critique is now menacing and threatening and eliciting death threats, which is a lie. They're not getting death threats. You can say any fool thing you want. When you're punished and called out for it in public, you can claim anything you want, and they do. Democrats never back off. Never. They never apologize. We're the victims. We're getting death threats. He's calling us out, and people are being mean to us over it, and he keeps calling us out. He knows what he's doing, and he keeps doing it anyway. Yeah, but he's going to be sorry. He's going to be sorry he did this to us. We're going to have more free time. Schiff was next.
This decision by Kevin McCarthy to bow to the demands of the most extreme elements of his conference and use the Intelligence Committee as this kind of political plaything doesn't show the strength of his speakership. Indeed, it shows the weakness of his speakership.
Yeah, he's very strong, and he's not political.
Beholden to the most extreme elements of his conference.
Yeah.
And it bodes, I think, poorly for how he'll conduct the remainder of his speakership for however long or short that may last.
Right.
But more to the point, by arrogating to himself the decision about who on the Democratic side of the aisle should lead the Intelligence Committee, who should sit on the Intelligence Committee, he will cause the intelligence agencies, I think, to distrust this action, and in combination with the formation of this so-called Select Committee on the Weaponization of the federal government, which ostensibly will have access to classified information.
Yes.
It will only, I think, breed distrust within the intelligence community as to what it can share and what it can feel confident about sharing with the Congress.
Yeah.
That will impact policymakers in terms of the information that we have to make decisions about how to protect our national security. All
right, so that's enough. You get it. So this guy, again, of all the people in Congress, this guy says Kevin McCarthy is politicizing intelligence. Yeah, this committee is being politicized now because Kevin McCarthy decides not to seat these three. Now it's being politicized. This little twerp, who doesn't deserve to be a member of Congress, never mind sit on intelligence, this little twerp oversaw 2 phony impeachments, lied to his constituents, lied about Russian collusion, colluded with Twitter, and tried to get Twitter to throw people off at his request. You talk about thwarting democracy? You talk about politicizing an institution or a committee? This guy is the absolute worst. It's amazing. Democrats do something in gaslighting that this is like an Olympic sport for these people. I've never seen anybody deploy gaslighting like this. They can stab you in the chest in broad daylight and hold the bloody knife and somehow make the bloodied corpse the bad guy. It's the most remarkable gift, but their reaction is telling. Lastly, the brother marrying anti-Semite, Ilhan Omar.
This decision by Kevin McCarthy
in modern American
to bow
history,
to the demands
the punishment of stripping a member of Congress of their committee assignments has been reserved for only the most egregious wrongdoings. Those convicted or indicted on corruption, those who have engaged in bribery, sexual misconduct, encouraged violence,
the guy you're standing next
or
to?
Other grave charges. I have served on the House Foreign Affairs Committee and the House Education and Labor Committee for the past 2 terms, committees that I have lived experience and expertise in. As a child who survived war, lived in a refugee camp, I would have never imagined that I would one day have the opportunity to serve on a subcommittee on Africa, global health,
yeah, we could never either.
Human rights.
We could never imagine you would serve on a committee either. I would not have believed
that I would one day not just serve as the first African-born member of Congress, but on a committee that oversees policies towards the continent.
She's African-born.
Kevin McCarthy's purely partisan move to strip us from our committee is not only a political stunt, but also a blow to the integrity of our democratic institution and threat to our national security.
I mean, look, you know what it is? Let me just say, it is disqualifying that the woman lists as credentials that she's African-born. Let me just say that because I realize that's probably unpopular to say. You are a United States representative. The fact that you use as your laundry list of credentials as to why you should sit on a committee that you're African-born is disqualifying. I don't give a rat's ass where you're born. You represent the United States, not Africa, lady. This is so telling. These three people throwing their tantrum yesterday, and they tell you who they are. The projection is thick here. All three of them have told you who they are. They literally describe Kevin McCarthy as they describe themselves. Also this, while we're talking about House Democrats, you know how everything always seems at first when new situations come up, it seems fringe or kooky. Things like ESG. A lot of you in this audience didn't even know what that was a few months ago. What is ESG? What is this ESG? I don't know. Is this a real thing? We've talked a lot about it. We've said, pay close attention. Investment houses like BlackRock and Vanguard, they've been leaning on companies. We've talked to you about what this is. Investment firms leaning on companies who do business with smaller companies to make sure that the companies they're doing business with are environmentally friendly and engaged in proper hiring practices. This is Democrat politics without having to legislate them. So, said another way, if you're if you're financially dependent or financially invested with a place like BlackRock or Vanguard or something like that, they can then lean on you and your company to make sure that if you're going to do any business and make any money out there, everybody you do business with better be buttoned up and in line with their politics, environmental social justice. Democrats consistently dismiss this thing. This isn't a thing. This isn't a thing. This isn't a thing. This isn't real. Much like gender ideology. It's not a thing. It's not a thing. It's not real. All of this is directly in your face. Chemically castrating children, wide open borders, this disgusting behavior from these Democrats who've been kicked off this intelligence committee. They're all just throwing it in your face. They're owning it now. It's all real. The gas stove thing. Remember Jennifer Granholm yesterday? We're not trying to take away your gas stove. The Washington Post literally wrote a story the same day that said, you need to get rid of your gas everything because we're coming after all your gas everything. Gas fireplaces, all of it. And this is all stuff that they will snort and say, it's not real. That's just kooky, talk show stuff. That's made up, right-wing stuff. That's not real. It's all real. It's always real. And so what sounded like kooky, ESG, and maybe something you didn't even know or sounded fringe. Headline from the Hill, House Democrats launch Sustainable Investing Caucus. So we're right back to it. What sounded like fringe and kooky and you didn't really know, now House Democrats have just decided to lovingly wrap their arms around the cause and charge the Hill with it. A group of House Democrats is forming a caucus to advocate for sustainable investing, a rapidly growing sector that already accounts for trillions in global investment. Oh, well, I thought that was a fringe issue and not real. Sean Casten, Juan Vargas announced yesterday they would be co-chairing the caucus, which includes 4 others. One of them, the Right Reverend Emmanuel Cleaver, a guy I know well from the Kansas City area. The caucus will advocate for policies sought by the sustainable investment industry, sometimes called environmental social governance, ESG. ESG investing has drawn broad interest in the financial sector as well as rising opposition from GOP-led states like Texas, Kentucky, Florida, West Virginia, and some Republicans in Congress. These political headwinds have blown against the policy, aiming to encourage sustainable investors, seeking federally guaranteed information about which investments are truly sustainable. The Securities and Exchange Commission is a particular focus of current controversy as it is expected to release its final climate disclosures rules this spring. ESG impacts the health and vibrancy of our communities, workplaces, and ecosystem, said the congressman from California. So it's 100% real, and these Democrats are now, along with the Securities and Exchange Commission, proudly trumpeting, oh yeah, and here we come. For any and all of you companies that are financially invested out there, we're going to make sure that we lay on our friends in finance to pressure you and your businesses to behave the way we want, since we can't legislatively win. Since we can't convince voters, we're going to make corporate America and financial America pressure business in America to do what we want politically. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the textbook definition of fascism. That's fascism. That's what this is. These Democrats are openly embracing fascism. That is the government of the United States leaning on corporate America, forcing corporate America to force other businesses they do business with to implement political strategies and ideologies that comport with their worldview without a single vote being passed anywhere. That's fascism. So make no mistake, these people are unapologetic. They are unafraid. And, when they're presented, when a mirror is held up in their faces and they're kicked off committees, they quadruple down. Just so everyone's clear about what Republicans face. And the next time I hear any pantywaist go, oh, I don't like those 20 recalcitrant Republicans. Oh, I wish they'd just nominate McCarthy and move on. I'm very uncomfortable with this fight. Remember who we're battling here. Remember what this fight is about. And if you're not made of the metal to go to the mat with these thugs, get out of the way and let the real men and women deal with it. You'd better be suited up and ready to fight these bastards, because they're ready. Are you? Bob Spinato at Williamsburg Dental. Broomall, Pennsylvania is where you find the office. Right off the Blue Route for you Philadelphians. You know where that is. The best dentist you're ever going to meet. Just period. That's it. I know it. I guarantee it. I have so many friends and colleagues and neighbors who over the years I've sent to Bob, and they all text me and they say the same thing. He is wonderful. You were right. No, I know I am. I mean, you don't befriend your dentist. You don't stay at his shore house if he hurts you, if he's a bad guy. I've never, Christine's pretty dental phobic, my wife, and we've been patients of his for a long time because he's extraordinarily patient. He's kind, he's gentle, he doesn't judge, he certainly doesn't hurt you. And I'm talking about even the Novocaine, even the shot. When they say you might feel a little pinch, he numbs you a little bit before that. You don't even feel that. He does a little trick when he does the thing. You don't even feel the pinch. Seriously, this guy is so upset. In fact, I will often tease him, and I'm like, Bob, you've asked me 300 times if I'm okay. I mean, he runs his day in such a way so he's not in a rush. He respects your schedule. You're in the chair at the time you're scheduled, but he's not rushing through a procedure and on to the next patient. He takes his time. He's delicate. And when it comes to cosmetic dentistry, forget it. If you want a whiter, brighter smile, a perfect-looking smile, look at the before and after pictures at williamsburg-dental.com and just know that if you're going to invest in something like that, there's only one guy I would recommend, and he's worth traveling to see. Bob Spinato, Williamsburg Dental. 610-353-2700, 610-353-2700, or williamsburg-dental.com. Okay, Trump has apparently been reinstated on Facebook and Instagram, or at least is going to be soon. Former President Trump's Facebook and Instagram accounts will be reinstated in the coming weeks, according to the parent company Meta. Meta handed down a 2-year ban on Trump's accounts in the wake of the January 6th Capitol insurrection, a suspension that the company called unprecedented. Well, yeah, I would say, considering you're suspending a president of the United States, that's pretty unprecedented. Now it will unlock the accounts in the coming weeks, but will apply heightened penalties for future offenses of its user guidelines, according to a release from the company on Wednesday. Oh, I'm sure they're catching hell for this. Our determination is that the risk has sufficiently receded. What risk? And that we should therefore adhere to the 2-year timeline we set out. He responded to Meta's announcement Wednesday by criticizing the initial decision to suspend him, Trump did. Facebook, which has lost billions of dollars in value since deplatforming your favorite president, me, has just announced that they are reinstating my account. Such a thing should never happen again to a sitting president or anybody else who is not deserving of retribution! ! Meta said that lifting the ban on Trump is also coming with new guardrails to deter repeat offenders, including heightened penalties for public figures who are returning from suspension related to civil unrest. Meta added it does not mean that there are no limits to what people can say on their platforms. Well, no, of course not. We shouldn't make the mistake of assuming you can speak freely. When there is a clear risk of a real-world harm, a deliberately high bar for Meta to intervene in public discourse, we act. Oh, I think Meta is acting for far less than, what did they say? Real-world harm? Threats? Under the new protocols, Trump's content could be removed and could face another suspension of between 1 month and 2 years. Meta's Oversight Board, which is the body that makes content moderation decisions on Facebook and Instagram, said in a statement after the announcement it has no role in deciding whether to allow Trump back on its sites. Today's decision to reinstate... You know what bothers me is that a company like this actually has boards like that don't talk to one another. How would that work in your own home? That's the equivalent of talk to your mother. Ask your mother with the kids. Aren't you a company? Like, don't you have one voice? I love that. Meta's Oversight Board, the body that makes content moderation decisions, said in a statement they have no role in the decision to allow him back on. How about the company just green lights or red lights a decision to allow Trump on Meta? And that's that. Nah. Got to have patsies, of course. So I don't know. Listen, yesterday at the Harumph Society, by the way, had a rather robust discussion. I'll just tell you, I don't know if you're a Harumpher, but yesterday I just volleyed a series of questions to the panel. That is you, if you're a subscriber. And it's always, this is the smartest audience out there in podcast and radio. I am grateful for you, and I learn much. Literally every single week I learn new things from this audience because there are incredibly smart, thoughtful people in it. And as such, I like to learn from incredibly smart, insightful, thoughtful people on things like what of the recent, I'll call them irritants, some of you have expressed with Trump. And I sort of listed a few of them that have caught my eye, that have caused some of you to reach out to me irritated with Trump. And so I listed them. As we know, he wants to run again. I listed them, and I asked Harumphers yesterday to please comment, and you did. We had a very robust comment section on Trump's return and what people thought of the recent criticisms lobbied at him by supporters, either current or previous supporters, who feel like he's lost his step, I guess, for want of a better term. So it was a good discussion, and it's discussions like that I want to have in the Harumph Society, where people are civil and thoughtful and not a bunch of drive-by haters and punks. So I hope you'll check out the Harumph Society for that. But Trump returning to Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, I don't think he can avoid. I mean, I really appreciate that he started Truth Social, but he built such a massive social media following there on those other traditional platforms. I don't think he can ignore it. The problem is, and I'm experiencing it in my little corner of the world, you put up certain video, you put up certain content, and you can just see it. I mean, just like you used to see it with Twitter before Elon bought it. I mean, my Twitter followers are now increasing organically, as they used to. But before Elon bought it, there was right after Trump was kicked off, and until Elon bought it, there was a solid year or two where if I gained even 100 followers on the platform, I lost them within 24 hours. And it went right back down to this kind of, you could clearly see that they had set an artificial ceiling, for want of a better term. I don't know the technical term on that, but they forbade the reach and growth of the account. They didn't necessarily purge it, although there was a huge drop in followers too, but they will claim that's, getting rid of bots. But you could see what Twitter was up to, and I guarantee you Meta is up to the very same thing. Facebook, those of you who post regularly political stuff, or you use certain hashtags or whatever, you've seen it. You see, we've talked about this before, you post a picture of your cat, and you get 3 gazillion likes from people. Oh, I love Boots. Look how cute Boots is. And it's like 3 million people see it. You post something of Obama up there and write Marxist. Like 2 people see it. You get like, I like. Like it's noticeable what they do. And it's algorithmic, but whatever. My point is, unfortunately, you got to kind of dance with the devil to a degree, and we have found that to be true in the media space. I don't like it, but they're still, it's like Newt said. Look, do we want TikTok around? Do we think TikTok is compromised by the Chinese? We do. Is it undeniable that young people still predominantly use TikTok, and not just young people anymore? It's become sort of a cultural phenomenon, and that's where a lot of, millions and millions and millions of American voters are. That's also true. So you can lament it, and that is something we conservatives kind of do poorly. We sit around and we chide it, and we say, screw that Facebook, screw that Instagram, screw that TikTok, I'm not going to do it. I mean, you can take that point of view, but when you don't challenge ideas in the arenas where people are, they don't even know you exist. And you can say, well, it's not even a fairly stacked deck. Okay, true, but that still doesn't mean you shouldn't show up. So that is one thing with Trump. I've just not agreed that he would walk away from Twitter and Facebook. He amassed too many millions of people. It's a massive, powerful platform, and I don't think he should walk away from it. I think he should fight for it, and I'm glad that he is, and it looks like they're reinstating him. So that's that. This is so cool. I was just noting on Facebook a couple of days ago that we've partnered with MyPillow and Mike Lindell as sponsors of this podcast, and so many of you, I put that up on Facebook, some pictures of Dean, my dog, on his new MyPillow dog bed, Christine and her new MyPillow slippers, my coffee, which I've been enjoying every morning. And so many of you commented on that post. Dennis said, I buy his products all the time. Great stuff. My wife loves the slippers. Jean said, I've been a longtime supporter of Mike's MyPillow for some time. His books, pillows, mattress foam, all make great gifts. Tracy said, my slippers and sheets are amazing. Mike Lindell's my hero, said Christine. Allison said, I love how these can be cleaned in the washer. The best slippers, said Julie. Rhonda said, I have his foam mattress pad. I love it. A lot of people love Dean on the new dog bed. And Mira said, I will definitely mention your name on my next order. Yes, do that. If you call MyPillow, or if you log on to MyPillow.com, use my name as your promo code. In fact, if you'll specifically type Chris Podcast, type Chris Podcast, and you will save up to 66% on everything in the store. The coffee, the pillows, the sheets, the slippers, the dog bed, and there's lots more. I had no idea how much was at MyPillow. So I do hope you'll either call 800-932-5056. My own staff loves their stuff. I got one of my associate producers a travel pillow, which he's digging. I have a body pillow. I hug that big body pillow every night. It's fantastic. I'm a side sleeper. I like to hug a pillow. I just do. Sorry. I don't know what that makes me, but I do. I'll let you psychiatrists in the audience evaluate what that means. 800-932-5056, mypillow.com. Either way, on these fantastic products, save money. Let them know that you listen to the show by entering Chris Pod or podcast, Chris Podcast, and that'll save you the dough, okay? Enjoy, and let me know how you enjoy your MyPillow products, mypillow.com. So could it be police were injured on January 6th by some of their own? Could it be friendly fire? Julie Kelly, damn it, will not stop reporting on January 6th. While everyone else is desperate to move on, Julie Kelly continues to swim in the J6 pool, and she joins us again from American Greatness. Good morning, Julie.
Good morning, and I want to thank Eddie for that opening. My favorite song off of Pyromania by Def Leppard, which is 40 years old, if you can believe it.
Whoa, is that right? 40. Well, that's your theme song now, you know. That's your walk-on music here, your walk-up music. Yeah. So, first of all, thank you for your continued work. I think I'll plead guilty here to being so deluged with constant. In fact, we just spoke with a previous guest who brought up the most brilliant point. The idea these days seems to be, let's just drop the most outrageous bombs in the news cycle that we can as Democrats or leftists. And then after that's cooled, we can come in with something less radical and outrageous and actually make it so. I enter in gas stoves, for instance. You know, they're coming for your gas stoves. Oh, that's silly. And then there's actual conversation about how they're trying to take away anything powered by gas from every new home built across the country, which is a real story in the Washington Post. So, and that's just one example. point in bringing all this up is, Julie, every day it's kind of these outrage bombs, right? And we move further away from a real event that still persecutes Americans for simply gathering, peacefully assembling in many cases, and that's January 6th. And so I just say thank you for continuing to cover it, because we do tend to move on.
Well, thank you so much from the beginning for covering my work, because not a lot of people were covering what I was reporting, because it was such a, controversial would be an understatement to discuss anything other than the narrative that January 6th was an insurrection incited by Donald Trump. People are domestic terrorists. And look, to the point that you were just making, it would be easy for me also to move on from this and follow the next shiny object, which is the classified documents scandal. And everyone's kind of, following that. And Republicans are talking about it for all these committees. But look, that's not an important issue. I'm sorry, but it's just not. I don't think most Americans think it's scandalous for presidents or even vice presidents, ex-ones, to have some sort of classified document.
I agree.
So the only scandal is, of course, the double standard treatment by the DOJ and the media. But the real issue of January 6th, to your point, is still ongoing. And that is this DOJ and FBI arresting people still every week now, more than 2 years later, with these ridiculous charges. Furthermore, Chris, that these people cannot get a fair trial in the nation's capital. And we saw that again this week with major verdicts coming down, ridiculous, banana republic style legal and judicial system in Washington, D.C. That is the real scandal. That's the crisis, not who has, a couple classified documents in their house.
We haven't talked since Pelosi left the speaker's post, but on that day, the big day of the transfer of power from, they made that big show on the Capitol of ringing the bell, and they brought the families, and they awarded the families, and the families rebuffed McConnell and McCarthy as they stood there extending their hand. Democrats made this big show, the holding hands, the quietly praying, we shall overcome business. They want to make January 6th, they want to commemorate it on the Capitol steps every year as September 11th. Is that working? I mean, do the American people revere January 6th that way? I don't think they do, but what do you think generally is a kind of a public perception of this day today with most people, real people, honest people?
I mean, yeah, I think it's mixed. I mean, I definitely think the Democratic base is swallowed whole, as usual, exactly what media and their leaders are shoving down their throat to be truth. They don't really care about the facts. They don't care what is happening to these people. They do consider them domestic terrorists. I think our side, and the reason why finally a lot of Republicans are starting to pay attention to it, not just a handful like Marjorie Taylor Greene or Paul Gosar or Louis Gohmert, who were interested in this from the beginning, are now starting to pay attention, is because they're hearing it from their constituents, and that is the travesty of political prisoners. I mean, you have men who now will be in jail for 2 years awaiting trial, denied bail by D.C. judges who will not release them, not only to their families, but to help prepare for their trial, simply because they were involved in the events of January 6th, even charged with violent crimes like attacking police. That just doesn't happen to other political protesters. There aren't people who protested in Lafayette Square and attacked federal officers on federal property who languished in jail for 2 years awaiting a trial. Their charges were dropped. So I think it's this ongoing double standard, Chris, that really angers Americans, even the ones who, think, even on our side, that, okay, well, they attacked police officers. But to your point, what we're going to discuss is the violent behavior of many police officers engaged in excessive force against protesters. And that prompted several of them to fight back, which they should have.
They are still telling the story that 5 officers were killed on January 6th. They are still saying that aloud with certainty, like it happened, like that's true, that 5 corpses were found that day dressed as police officers. That's just, I can't believe there's a single American that believes that's true, but they just say it, and so I guess it's so, and no one challenges it. And you can hate January 6th, and you can hate everybody involved with it if you want, but you can't just make up out of whole cloth there were 5 dead police officers out of that day.
Well, they do. And not only is that egregiously lied about in the media, Joe Biden says it. Nancy Pelosi says it. Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, insists that 5 police officers died. No police officers died as a result of January 6th. Brian Sicknick, age 42, tragically died on January 7th, 2021, of natural causes. He had 2 strokes caused by a blood clot that had nothing to do with anything in January 6th. He was not beaten by anyone, even though the New York Times lied about that for weeks, said he was bludgeoned to death with a fire extinguisher. They retracted that story. Then they came up with, well, he died as a result of a chemical, allergic reaction to chemical spray. That was not true either. But look, tomorrow, a man named Julian Cater, who after 18 months in the D.C. gulag, mostly in solitary confinement conditions, finally accepted a government plea deal, pleaded guilty to attacking a police officer, including Brian Sicknick. He allegedly was photographed or videotaped using pepper spray against officers. I deconstruct that in my article from this week, excuse me. The government wants him in jail for 7.5 years, Chris. His sentencing is tomorrow. Even worse than that, they are going to allow Brian Sicknick's family members and his ex, Sandra Garza, who's been on the cable circuit for 2 years, acting like the grieving widow, even though they had broken up months before January 6th. They wrote letters, and every single letter blamed Donald Trump for Brian Sicknick's death. This is the most sickening, twisted patient of, by all accounts, a very decent man, Brian Sicknick's death by his own loved ones. This is how warped the story of January 6th has become. They wrote letters, and they want to testify in court before the judge tomorrow and give victim impact statements, even though Brian Sicknick died of natural causes, because they want this man, Julian Cater, to spend the next 5 years at least in prison. 33-year-old man with no criminal record. They want him to suffer because they are, for some reason, we don't know what the motive is, perpetuating the lie that Brian Sicknick and other officers died because of January 6th.
Who are the other officers that died? I still don't really know the story of these. They keep claiming 5. All right, so Sicknick is one. Are there still 4 others that they continue to trot out as killed by January 6th? I don't know their stories, to be perfectly honest.
There are 4 more officers who reportedly committed suicide. Their family members and the police force, Capitol Police and D.C. Metro, blame those suicides on what happened on 6th. Okay, let's play that game, Chris. Maybe they committed suicide related to January 6th because of what they saw that day, which was the death of 4 Trump supporters, either completely or partially due to excessive force by their own fellow officers. Maybe they were traumatized after seeing police officers beat women over the head with metal batons, gassing people for no reason, shoving them off of a balcony. Maybe they were traumatized after they heard or saw Michael Byrd shoot at almost point-blank range Ashley Babbitt almost in the face and saw that she died. So 4 officers committed suicide. 2 of them were months after January 6th. But again, these people are so twisted and demented that they are happy to exploit any tragic death, whatever the circumstances, to bolster the narrative that January 6th was a deadly insurrection. Well, it was, but the only people who died on January 6th were 4 Trump supporters: Ashley Babbitt, Roseanne Boylan, Kevin Greason, and Benjamin Phillips. You never hear their names by the president, Joe Biden, the media, certainly the January 6th Select Committee, didn't even have the guts to cite Ashley Babbitt's death in their report. They referred to her as that woman who was shot. can't even say her name. So that's why it's important to me to continue to report on this, focus on this, not chase, the squirrel of whatever the media or Washington throws out that day. Because the truth has to be told, not just on behalf of the 4 people who really did die on January 6th, but the families and Americans who are absolutely having their lives destroyed. And this is not going to stop, Chris.
No.
DOJ has already warned the FBI this is going to go on for years. They want at least to double the number of January 6th defendants, which now is almost at 1,000 total defendants. They want to double that, possibly triple that number.
Well, and by the way, they've also taken to rounding up anybody who's a pro-life protester. I mean, they're actively trying to lock away a guy who shoved a guy out of his son's face while peacefully protesting outside a Planned Parenthood clinic. He's on trial. He could go away for 11 years over something that lower courts even dropped as a case, but Merrick Garland 2 years later is picking up and trying to throw him away for 11 years. So they're not just doing this to J6 folks. They're doing it to pro-life people. We know they tried or were threatening at least to collude with the National School Board Association to go after parents who would protest at school board meetings. There seems to be a running theme, doesn't there?
There absolutely is a running theme. And so the idea of Merrick Garland, I think it was earlier this week, the clip circulating that says, they're a fair justice department. They don't target people based on if they're Republican or Democrat. Well, that's just flat out lie. And he knows that.
Yeah.
But this is very dangerous territory. And what's happening to these people, what's happening to, I believe his name is it Mark Houck,
yes,
the man who is on trial?
Yes.
This is the chilling effect, though, Chris. This is their own crusade of terror, campaign of terror against the right. And that is to have a chilling effect to criminalize political dissent, to stop people from protesting outside of Planned Parenthood clinics, to stop people from organizing protests against the Biden regime, which it pretty much successfully has done.
Yes.
They didn't want another Tea Party 2.0 after Joe Biden took the White House, right? So this was their way to do that.
So, Julie, are you pleased at all? I mean, I know it's sort of little comfort given what we've laid out, and it's pretty heavy, and I don't think House Republicans in 2 years are going to be able to correct course. I have to give, I guess, McCarthy a little bit of credit in his move to, I mean, it's the right thing to do, and I don't want to celebrate it too heavily, but I was pleased to see McCarthy forcefully say, Swalwell, Schiff, Omar, no committees for you, no intel committees for you. Of course, they went out and beat their chest in grandstand yesterday and said, basically threatened him, you'll pay for giving us all this free time. I mean, I thought about you, particularly with Schiff. Like, I wondered if that brought you a little satisfaction that the guy was at least stripped of the committee.
Oh, it absolutely does. I mean, it's great to see Adam Schiff get some teeny tiny measure of comeuppance for what he's done, which is lie to the American people for years that he had evidence of collusion, which he never produced and was never found. But even more, I think, more reason why he should have been removed is taking intelligence and leaking it to the press. So that right there should disqualify him, I think, not just from Intelligence Committee, from all committees. I think he should be bounced from Congress. The guy should be on trial himself for what he lied about. Not just lied to the American people. It's in official government documents. So this is what he partially deserves. I'm also I will give Kevin McCarthy credit for a few other things, which is publicly saying that he wants the release of the 14,000 hours of surveillance video the Capitol Police and DOJ is continuing to keep under wraps away from the American people. So he supports that as well. But also his committee selections. I mean, I'm very gratified to see Marjorie Taylor Greene on both House Oversight and then the Select Committee on the Coronavirus. And he has put some real fighters in positions of power on very powerful committees. So I will publicly say that I'm not a fan of Kevin McCarthy. And I do think that this is an outcome of the Speaker's fight.
Yes.
That elevated some of our real warriors to positions of power and influence, not just on these committees, but in Washington. I have been so proud watching Marjorie Taylor Greene endure what she has endured from this media, Democrats, even her own fellow Republicans like Dan Crenshaw, to endure what she did and now come out on the other side as one of our real leaders in the Republican Party. So I'm really happy to see that, and happy to see Kevin McCarthy, promote that sort of elevation to political power.
The latest work at American Greatness is on this Julian Cater that you mentioned today, facing 8 years in prison. That's tomorrow in New Jersey. And is this happening in Washington? Is that where this sentencing will occur?
Everything happens in Washington, yes.
Yeah, of course.
We'll go before Judge Thomas Hogan, who is a Reagan appointee, 83 years old. He should have retired years ago. But get this, Thomas Hogan is retiring, and you know why? He said in a court hearing, I'm hearing that we're going to get 1,000 more January 6 cases, and this is not how I want to spend the next 5 or 6 years of my life.
Wow. You'll continue to cover it like nobody else does. That's why we check in, and we're grateful you do at American Greatness. Julie Kelly. Thank you, Julie. You know, we're now members of the Salem Podcast Network. So the Chris Stigall Show podcast is now distributed nationwide by our mothership at Salem, and we're awfully honored to be a part of that family. That's where Charlie Kirk and Dinesh D'Souza and Dennis Prager and Seb and Mike Gallagher, and now Michelle Tafoya. Michelle Tafoya has her own podcast called Sideline Sanity. Tomorrow we're going to interview Michelle Tafoya about that new podcast, as well as her thoughts about her time with NBC and her years and years and years with the NBC sports broadcast on the sidelines of Sunday Night Football. I'm, as a football fan and having watched her for years that way, I'm going to have to resist asking her nothing but football-related questions. I mean, my understanding is she left football because she wanted to talk about more things, and my tendency is going to want to talk about nothing but football. So, Fast Eddie, you're going to have to rein me in and make sure that I don't talk exclusively football with her, but I'm kind of a fanboy that way,
Well, this is such a big weekend. I mean, think about what you're going to be doing Sunday.
I know.
Like it's just like I have to know all of it.
I'm going to save that for the end. What I'm going to do is discipline myself to talk other business with her, and then I'll save my football-related questions for the end. We'll see what she thinks about the Birds and the Chiefs. I read that she's kind of tight with Andy Reid, by the way, personally, but I don't know that to be sure. And what she thinks. This Brock Purdy out there, by the way, this Brock Purdy guy is getting a lot of press. Fox wrote a big story about him yesterday, how he is giving God all the glory. Seems like a very God-honoring kid. There's a lot of golden boy press about Brock Purdy out there right now. You seeing that out there, Fast Eddie?
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. A lot. You're right.
We'll see. So that's tomorrow on the show. Let's see. A couple of other interesting stories before we get out of here today. Beto O'Rourke still has $100,000 of Sam Bankman-Fried's crypto cash. Does that surprise you? Disgraced crypto giant Sam Bankman-Fried, major Democrat donor, also donated some money to Republicans, now facing charges of fraud, money laundering, campaign finance. According to a new report by the Washington Free Beacon, perennial Democrat loser Beto O'Rourke still has about $100,000 of Sam Bankman-Fried's dirty money. You think he's going to give it back? I find that losers who take tons of money before they lose don't often give the money back.
No, what about how much does Stacey Abrams still have in the bank?
Oh, man, yeah. Stacey Abrams is sitting on a mountain of cash. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, she just gave an interview where she intends to run again. She said she's not going anywhere. Hey, keep it up. These Democrats that lose and lose and lose, do you know the money they absorb out of the system? We should want Beto O'Rourke and Stacey Abrams and people like them to run every cycle. Just keep sucking money out of the system. And then, they want to build houses and whatever with it. Go for it. DirecTV has tossed Newsmax. DirecTV said they dropped conservative television network Newsmax Tuesday night after a dispute on carriage fees. DirecTV says they're no longer airing Newsmax because of a fee dispute. Newsmax describes their decision as a censorship move to silence the network. The media outlet also pointed to DirecTV's decision a year earlier to drop another conservative network, One America News Network, or OAN. House Republicans want to know about Hunter Biden's art sales. House Republicans renewed their investigation Wednesday into the art dealings of Hunter Biden, pushing for details on who is purchasing his work as part of the party's long-promised probe into Joe Biden and his family. Yeah, who would... much like who would pay, what was he making, $80,000 a month for his work on an oil board in Ukraine? Who would pay $250,000 for Hunter Biden's art? Is he any more qualified as an artist than he was a oil company executive? I don't think so. The crack addict. Of course, I guess art is subjective. There are people that are big art snobs that'll stare at something and go, isn't that beautiful, the texture, the colors? And I'll go, I don't. It looks like blobs to me. And then finally, I don't know what to tell you, folks. I know you want desperately that this guy would be woke and on your side, but he keeps disappointing you out there. Pope Francis. Awfully sorry, Fast Eddie. Pope Francis said in an interview this week, homosexuality is not a crime. He said any laws that penalize homosexuality, that's unjust, but he still says it remains a sin. Not a crime, but remains a sin. I mean, it's pretty consistent with the book. I know that upsets people and it makes everyone very uncomfortable because we've moved into a new universe of malleability when it comes to this issue of sexuality and gender and whatnot. But at least on this issue, even though he continues to be woke on many things, the Pope continues to be a sticky wicket for the progressives. He still calls it a sin because God does too.
The Chris DeGaulle Show podcast.